And welcome back to our weekly ship show. This is where we cover all the need to know info that's happening in the world of shipping. So our goal here for you and your teams is for you guys to understand the major elements of what's happening in the world of supply chain so you guys can avoid paying unnecessarily large shipping bills, fees, avoid disruption. But another angle is we want you to be a little bit more informed when negotiating with your suppliers. So you really understand some of the elements happening right now, what they're getting influenced by. I got a great example, and this is going to take me already down a rabbit hole, but we've got a customer who reached out to us and just said, hey, the supplier's giving us this quote for shipping from, I'm going to keep this kind of private. So from X to X, we're not shipping right now. We're shipping in 6 months. Does this make sense or not? And it was a great example of a situation where having control of your Incoterms can really, really, really help you control your costs. And we had a great discussion about it, but we just want you guys to be really informed what's going on. It is a changing environment. Obviously, the pandemic was years ago, but thankfully, but this environment still in the market, we're still on the swinging pendulum. So unfortunately, we're still getting affected by a lot of those things. And today's episode is really talking about some of those things going on and hopefully some of the improvements that's going forward. Now, I want to quick plug us. My name is Jason Brand. I am the Director of Outreach and Partner Development here at Supply Chain Solutions. And if you hear us say the acronym SCS, we're referring to ourselves, Supply Chain Solutions. So remember that just in case. Now, if this is your first time hearing about us, and it is really important to understand kind of what we are, and that is we've built our company around this idea of being a full service logistics solutions provider. And I say the word solutions because we are, really an army of individual organizations that work together, right? We've got a consulting team, an international team, a domestic team, a technology team, a warehousing team, and a customs team. And we come together to create really truly best-in-class end-to-end solutions for our clients that really can fill all the gaps and make it as hands-off as possible for you. So if you haven't had a conversation with us, please do reach out. We'd love to take a look at your operation, see if there's any opportunities for improvement. Sometimes some of our clients are doing it great. They just like a little bit more oversight. So reach out to us. We will, schedule that chat. And if you know me, also give me a text. We've got a few GR Chamber events, that's Grand Rapids here coming up, along with the Right Place events and a few others that you can catch me at, also some of my associates. So hopefully if you see this episode, make sure you stop by and say hi to me. Also, let me know if I lost you at any point or if you need to know more information, and I can help you then. So today we've got a little bit of a dense topic, and that is OSRA 2020, OSRA 2020, OSRA 22, oh my gosh, and OSRA 2.0. Yeah, that's way too many twos for my liking, and that totally messes up any mental peg system I've got set up for that. But, this is really an area we don't like to focus our shows around, and simply because when you're talking about legal stuff and legal changes, really doing it properly can be a very long and challenging process. But the OSRA legislation, it's having some very important updates, and they could make some really big differences in the coming years for you and just shippers in general. So it is our duty. We've got to break this down, and our goal is to make this easy to understand, but also easy to remember. So, we love to do this on the show. We need to set the table, and that is give you guys some framework to absorb this knowledge gavage we're about to subject you all to. So that being said, we're going to go all the way back to 1916. So get excited. I promise it's going to be a very brief trip, and we will find ourselves back here in 2024 in no time. So back in 1916, what was significant? A few things, but pertaining to ocean shipping, we had the passage of the Shipping Act of 1916. Now, I'm not going to get into incredible detail here because, as you can imagine, a lot of those elements of that legislation have become irrelevant with time. But the key thing here is that that's the date that the first ocean shipping regulatory bodies were created, which at this point was broken into the Federal Maritime Board and also the U.S. Maritime Commission. Now, this is very significant. It's really the first two boards governing international ocean shipping laws in the U.S. And, while they set a bunch of rules and regulations, over time, it became very clear that these were very toothless organizations in nature. And, as a result, many of these laws that began to become passed were more or less recommendations. Obviously, there's a lot of things here to unpack, and there's a lot of variables. There's some very large events going on all around this time period, particularly between this act and the next significant act. So all of that factored in. But this idea of toothlessness, right, is critical and important to remember. Now, if we move forward a little bit, another key thing to remember is, back in 1916, we did not have container shipping. Really, that radical overhaul of containerization, and just to give you a little factoid here, beginnings were credited to McLean's, and that was back in roughly 1956. They actually converted a World War II tanker. It was named the Ideal X, and they sailed from Newark, New Jersey to Houston, Texas. The cool thing about that voyage is they had their regular breakbulk cargo, but they also had these constructed metal containers. They had 58 of them. And that kind of voyage was like the beginnings of containerization, and it really set into motion just the standardization of the industry in general. So that's 1956. Pretty soon after that, and definitely influenced by that, we had this huge update to ocean shipping, and specifically the Ocean Shipping Act, which happened in 1961. So these new amendments, they were obviously made off of the original 1916 Act. And the real big takeaway here that I want everybody to know about is, it was the combination of those two existing shipping regulatory bodies, which I mentioned, into one. And that body is the one that still stands today. It's the FMC, the Federal Maritime Commission. So the goals of the organization, where they really were the same as in the past. So just to very loosely kind of quote part of the act, the FMC was created to regulate the international ocean transportation of the United States, aiming at ensuring a competitive and efficient ocean transportation system for the benefit of the nation's economy and the global marketplace. So just in general, a pretty fluffy statement that pretty much anyone could get behind. It's basically going to say things are going to get better, and let's leave it at that. But let's fast forward a little bit, and we're going to skip the 1984 Shipping Act, which had plenty of significance, but I really want to get to the legislation on hand. So we're skipping forward, and that's all the way up to OSRA 2.0, and that stands for the Ocean Shipping Reform Act of 2022. And in my opinion, and in the opinion of many others, this is really where it starts to get interesting. So OSRA 2022, or OSRA 22, these twos are going to kill me. It's a piece of legislation that was introduced which directly is an amendment to that Shipping Act of 1984, and like many of the shipping acts before it. But it was specifically introduced to address various issues in the maritime shipping industry, and they were becoming extremely clear and abused during the COVID-19 pandemic. So the act used the same verbiage as the previous act, saying things like the law is going to promote fair and efficient practices in the shipping industry, and it's also aiming to create, a more competitive and transparent environment for shipping. But there really is some genius here, and the genius behind that act is this attempt to give the FMC some real teeth for the first time. It really did provide a groundwork to efficiently create the necessary legal cases for enforcement. And this is why it is very interesting. This is also why, you and other shippers need to do your homework on this legislation. You got to keep up to date with it, and you've got to utilize those teeth when possible. So let's go back to the changes OSRA 2022 brought in. So in an attempt to ensure fair practices within the ocean shipping industry or sector, it established clear guidelines for demurrage and detention. It also enhanced the dispute and resolution mechanisms. The goal here was to really start to chip away at some of these more unreasonable practices by ocean shippers, and just in general, start to foster a more equitable environment for all of the stakeholders involved. So, furthermore, this act introduced new regulations that were concerning carrier alliances, also service contracts. The goal here was to enhance competition within the industry. So when they implemented these new rules, OSRA 2022 was anticipated to stimulate more competitive pricing and improve service levels across the industry. And this just simply was the goals built into this act of leveling the playing field. Now, lastly, 22, as I'm going to call it, significantly bolstered the regulatory powers of the FMC, enabling it to provide more efficient oversight and take decisive action against any unfair or any competitive practices. Now, the act also mandated a more detailed and more timely reporting process from carriers and terminals. The goal here was to increase that transparency and throughout maritime operations, but it also empowered shippers and other participants to make these informed decisions because of this more timely production of information. In general, it was really an attempt to wipe the slate clean of just all of these problems that the ocean shipping industry, we've been dealing with for so many years. But during the pandemic, those problems really floated to the surface and became real thorns in the side of the economy and also shippers and just in general, how many businesses did business. And, through that, it's shining the light on these hidden fees very clearly, bringing these unfair processes throughout the industry to light and helping the business community in general kind of come up against unfair practices. So really, truly, we are truly thankful for that. The worst thing in the world is if we've got a demurrage and detention charge with one of our customers. It is just a horrible experience. And, all of we've got to go through a very lengthy process trying to fight it. And sometimes just the way they are set into motion is unbelievable. Actually, I've got a lot of information I want to talk about that I think we're going to actually send out in an email because it's so detailed. But it goes through, because of OSRA 2.0, so many cases that were brought up that in the past, companies would have just had to eat those costs. And now there's actually a chance that they don't have to. So very, very, very cool. And this is rabbit hole city right now. I've got to be very careful because so many of the discussions we've had have gone into facets of this. But let's focus up. Let's move forward. So OSRA 2.0, we just discussed. Let's talk about OSRA 2.0. Now, this term is referring to new legislative efforts built upon the foundation of that OSRA 2.0 that we just talked about. And the key thing here is that just last Thursday, the U.S. House of Representatives voted to approve these new implementations and essentially bring into law some of these 2.0 amendments. So the new OSRA 2.0 package, I'm going to call it the package, it aims to enhance the oversight of China-based carriers and freight exchanges. And it's really a direct reflection of the U.S.'s growing concerns over the influence of the Chinese Communist Party in the U.S. ocean or maritime sector. So specifically what's going on here is OSRA 2.0, it broadens the scope of what is constituted as a controlled carrier, something that was outlined in the previous, remember, this is going to get so mental boggling, but in the 22 legislation, the 2.0 broadened it. So with these updates, now it really includes shipping lines that are backed by non-market economy countries, or those that we've scrutinized for anti-competitive practices by the USTR or the U.S. Trade Representative. The 2.0 package is also introducing several significant provisions that go a lot further in an attempt to curb what has been seen as unfair practices in the shipping industry. So it does allow U.S. shippers to lodge complaints against shipping exchanges as well that they believe could be manipulating the market. Actually, in this act, they did call out one in particular. That was the Shanghai Shipping Exchange. But, just to really further lather on a little bit more of the China concern that went into this brand new act that just last Thursday was voted and approved. This act goes as far as prohibiting U.S. terminals and operators to utilize something called Log Inc. It's a Chinese software, and it has been going through the ringer and being accused of monitoring U.S. port crane activity. Now, I've got to mention this because going forward, a couple of the changes in here are going to become significant. But for now, it's just something you've got to know. It's just really some organizational changes that have happened as a result of this 2.0 package. So OSRA 2.0, just as a reminder for everyone, they also did mandate the creation of a few new advisory committees that counsel the FMC on matters related to ocean carriers and terminal operators. And this is actually on top of an existing committee, the National Shipper Advisor Committee, which was established during the OG update of OSRA, so the OSRA 2022 version. So as I mentioned, not going to go into incredible depth on that, but part of the reasoning here for this new update, I think, is pretty cool. So this update wants to kind of take all of the workload and divide it very, very clearly into each area with a goal of actually producing more results. They want the FMC to be very, very focused on setting regulations in regards specifically to creating a standardized data format for maritime freight logistics. They want that laser focus, and they feel that by having a completely agreed upon working standardized data format will allow these bodies in general to have the transparency they need to dig their teeth in when necessary. And, it's cool to see this progress being made. It does have a huge effect on everyone. It's going to have a huge effect on, obviously, the reporting requirements. And for us and other companies, And as a result, though, it's in an age of data, in an age of AI, in an age of connectivity, these standardized data formats can be very, very powerful. So as you can see, not only in 22 was this a push, this is now a new push in 2024. You're going to expect some real results on this very soon. And this could be huge, quite frankly. Really, really huge. Also, what's fantastic is we really did need to create a more robust framework as quickly as possible after the pandemic to prevent something like that from happening again, because it's not necessarily going to take a pandemic, right? We've already had these issues with disruptions obviously happening over by the Red Sea and the Suez and also the Panama Canal. And, we need to make sure that these exchanges aren't manipulated in any way that would in turn lead to you paying more than you should based on what supply and demand demands. So yeah, really keep your eyes on these. So I've got a ton of data here, a ton of breakdown of lawsuits in particular, and it will bore all of you. Very interesting stuff, but I can't even bring it to life with my voice. So what we're going to do is I'm going to get this over to our marketing team and everybody who's been participating here, or if you want to, if you're a friend, you didn't see this, you want to reach out, we'll send it to you. But there's a few really big ones moving through because of OSRA 2.0 and some of the regulation that came with OSRA 2.0, some of the requirements, the 3-year reporting requirement and such that are moving through, and they're making some progress. And it'd be really good, and I think very hopeful for everyone to kind of see that if you've dealt with a demergent detention issue or some other unfair practice, just to kind of know, what abilities you have and what process there is. So yeah, OSRA 22 and OSRA 2.0. These are really the big regulatory things coming to the realm right now. One of the final notes I want to make, and I just made this a little bit earlier, was 2.0 is extremely focused on China at this moment. And it's really a symptom of what's going on in general for our focus. But that is what we got for you today. I hope we kept you to the end because, it is a legal episode. It's not as fun and flowery. Not to say a lot of them are fun lately, because obviously we've got definitely some things going on in the shipping realm. But that being said, I do hope you learned something. Do make sure if you're getting a demergent retention charge or, any other one of the unfair practices, make sure you're reaching out to us, because we're going to be your ally in this. And we have a lot more power now to actually, elevate these to a point where they could be resolved. So thank you so much for joining us. Anthony wasn't able to be with us today. He was trying to, but he just completely wasn't able to the last minute. So he sends his regards as well. And make it a great day, everyone. Thank you. Bye.